Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa here on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. It is Sunday, the 7th of November, 2021. My special feature guest to be on just a moment. I've lost him there. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, there we go. So my special feature guest today is none other than Anwar Adams, who's the leader of the Democratic Independent Party in South Africa, focus in the Western Cape. Just waiting for his connection. His microphone is on mute and his camera is on, but the microphone is still on mute there. All right, there.
Good evening.
There we go. I can hear him. How's it?
That's great. Thank you very much for taking the time and having me. And yes, good evening to everyone and out there.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you on. I brought you on because one of my guests asked me to get you on. They asked me to get you on, I think, just as the election was about to occur, but with all the interviews I already had set up and all the analysis I was doing pre-election, I don't think I got around to it. And she reminded me, I asked you to get Anwar Adams on. Could you make that happen? I said, well, can you put me in touch with him? And so it goes from there. Well, welcome to the program. We are now about a week out from when the election took place. And I think that there are a number of people who are not happy, including tens of thousands of South Africans who are disenfranchised by showing up, rocking up at polls and finding that they were not registered in place for which they'd already received either a text message or a letter confirming that they were registered for special voting and on Monday. So let's get your thoughts about the election. Your party, are you happy with how it went or are you unhappy? I know that you did go and you had some comments for the Independent Electoral Commission, or as I call them, Incontinent Electoral Commission, which means they're full of crap.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's important. And, whoever asked you to get me on your show, we can always say, better late than never.
Yeah.
Because, time has its place. Everything has its place. And it's a pity but there's most probably a reason why we have to come on this time. The electorate was disenfranchised. The electorate was lied to. And the political parties, one and all, was not given a fair opportunity. It was not free, it was not fair, the elections was rigged. And as the DI, we are going to continue to ask for a re-election. You cannot expect political parties, individuals, leadership to sign a pledge and then there are violations. Instead of defending themselves, they should do the honorable thing and investigate. I'm not an investigator. I'm not the law. I am a citizen. I'm a political party, a leader of a political party, and we have been made aware and we saw the violation. Now, if these things happen, if it was anyone else, they would have jumped and it would have been done. All we require is for this to be investigated because there was gross violations of the code of conduct. Now, it's not sour grapes, because what I'm saying here is one in all. I speak for the DI, but at the same time, it is the electorate that was disenfranchised and political parties that did not get a fair exposure. We can't expect, if you're having 30-odd people in a ward or on the ballot, but you're only actually giving the electorate 3 or 4 parties all the time on the media, it's a clear indication that you're telling the media, this is your choices. You have 4 out of 30. We all pay the same amount of money to contest the elections, and we expect a fair and equal opportunity, which means we start on the same starting line. So it's very sad. On Wednesday, we will be having a press conference, and each party will be given the opportunity to speak for themselves. We as a DI, within that meeting and coming from that, we will speak as the DI. Because it senses you're going to try and dilute me and talk to us about parties. And we want to be known that we are against something that has been violated. And the ruling parties are culprits. to this violation of the code of conduct and the pledge that they have signed. So that's where our standpoint is. It has not moved. It's actually just getting stronger against what? I mean, we want a seat. We can sit back and I don't feel proud of the seat because of the way it was attained. So it's very difficult to show enthusiasm or happiness because there is. I cannot. But we can take them on now from the inside. But, you know, it's a very difficult situation I find myself in because it is wrong. If I've got the seat, I'm going to, what do I do with it? We can't also be left out on the greater scheme of things, but there's a lot of others that have been left out. Purely because, I mean, I haven't even heard of some of the political parties. It does not mean that they are political parties that you have not heard of, that they are not offering the electorate anything. They got onto the ballot because there's an electorate out there, a portion that believes in them. So if they're not on the ballot, they've not been elected, who speaks for their electorate? And how do they speak for that electorate? Now, more than 50% of the electorate, or the registered voter, more than 50% did not cast their votes. And of that more than 50%, we don't know how big the percentage that was turned away from the poll to contest. We do know.
That's a fair point. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, you might carry
it. There's a bit of a break in because of the data, but sorry, your point being that we don't know how many people were turned away. For instance, at the Finbos Park retirement home in Hermanus on Saturday, one of my viewers was there and recorded footage of what was going on. And of 50 elderly infirm people who gathered there, many who traveled to that because that's their voting station, including wheelchair-bound voters, 80% of them were turned away because they said they weren't on the list of voters, including people who had voted for 50 years in the same municipality, same place for 50 years, and they said they weren't on the list. Shocking what was happening there. We actually saw in Ekurhuleni, the Democratic Alliance candidate from Refiwe and Chike was turned away and refused to leave. They called the police on her to remove her from the polling station. She had a letter confirming she had right to vote for special voting because she was a candidate and would not be available to vote on Monday. So how did this play out in the mother city? Because you're in Cape Town. Did you see this happening there? Was it a similar situation, or is that just a one-off?
Well, those of people being turned away was an ongoing thing throughout the day. And it was difficult to respond to because we did not know the actual, because people were just saying, I've been voting, since 94. Oh, but I voted the last election. I've registered. Now, voter education is extremely important. Mm-hmm. And this exactly shows you that voter education was not done 100%, wasn't done properly. Because a man decided, okay, I'm voting this time, I'm going to vote, he knows where he's been voting all the time, whether it's been a general election or a local government election, that is where he's been voting. Now, there's a demarcation of wards that it normally takes place. The boundaries are redrawn, and you're going to find that people will fall outside of that demarcation now. They've been voting for all these years at point A, but now because of the demarcation, they try and streamline the demarcation. You must also understand there is an increase in the population, so they try and keep it balanced in the sense of the amount of people within a ward. Now, that also calls for a demarcation, hence the increase of wards over the years as well. So people now find that they used to vote in voting station A and the VD within that ward, and now, because of the demarcation, not any longer. I think it was unfair and completely wrong for the IEC now to think that everyone knows this, to think that every old or young voter is informed. So we could have expected that person is going to come back to their voting station that they've been voting for in all these years. They should have had both information ballots, the previous one and those that fall outside of that demarcation now. That's not a rocket scientist's job, this. You know that person voted here the last time, 5 years ago. He might not have heard or know about the demarcation. That we must also treat with empathy, because it's a vote, it's a person that is voting because he wants to make a change. He feels that he is sick and tired of voting for the same nonsense year in, year out, every 5 years. So here, the electorate needs to be informed. They need to be educated. So now they're using the issue of the time frame. We knew 5 years ago there's going to be election.
Yep.
We didn't know there was going to be a pandemic that is going to affect everything. Now, so that has been throughout the day, and this is from all political parties are going to give you that story of how people was turned away from the polling stations because of the new demarcations. They didn't even explain it to the people. They just said, no, you're not here, you got to go somewhere else. Then that's just one of the issues which you have obviously highlighted now to ask me about.
You've actually, you're one of the first people that's actually echoed that comment, which I've talked about in the past, but not recently, is that it is a responsibility of the Electoral Commission to let people know, to educate them. You know, I before this election, when they had Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke come out of retirement and do a report, and they waited till almost the clock was expired so that they tried to put the government and the courts in an awkward position. They could have done that in January and February this year instead of waiting till June to ask him to do it. But when he came out with this report and he said, it's not possible to hold free and fair elections in South Africa because of the pandemic and because there isn't time to campaign. And my argument to that was, you know, there's a campaign, you know, there's an election. It's 5 years and no more than 90 days after the councils are seated from the last election.
Okay.
So this is not rocket science. Also, we've known since March 27th of last year that we're in the midst of a pandemic, as Cyril Ramaphosa told us 3 weeks to get the hospitals ready. By the way, there are fewer intensive care beds today in South Africa than there were last year on March 27th because of the fire and, of course, a couple hospitals being shut down. So anyway, so in June of last year, when they first eased the lockdown restrictions, I argued that opposition parties and parties should be out campaigning now, that politics is a blood sport. It's 365 days a year. If you want to bring people to your standard, you have to campaign all the time. You don't wait till 60 days, 90 days before election, slap a bunch of posters up, promise to kiss babies and pet dogs, and then that's going to make it happen. So I don't want to hear from the Independent Electoral Commission, there wasn't time, it wasn't free and fair. That's nonsense. But I was wrong, Anwar. I was completely wrong, and I've told my viewers this. I was wrong. In fact, you know, despite the fact that I voted in 3 elections in that time frame during the pandemic and never got the bug, and you know, used good hygiene and such, never got the bug, and that 115 countries around the world had elections, and that over 35 countries in Africa had elections, including the failed state of the Central African Republic, Namibia, where the SWAPO party was handed its hat and it lost control of all the metropolitans and cities, and Zambia, where the ruling party was thrown out, and Somaliland, which nobody recognizes. I was wrong. They said they couldn't hold a free and fair election in South Africa, and I was wrong. The IEC was correct. You can't hold a free and fair election in South Africa if the IEC is in charge, and that's the bottom line. I was wrong.
Well, it played itself out, and that's the result of it. Doesn't matter where you find yourself. This election was rigged, and people were disenfranchised. That 50 people or 100 people within that was in that ward previously, you got their names. You can give me a voter's roll of exactly where people are, because the IEC was given a time frame to harvest the voters' roll with address. People need to have their addresses. So you could give me a new voters' roll now from Mr. A to Mr. X, right? How come these people went to a voting booth to find themselves turned away? Surely you as the IEC knows exactly that 100 people that is not within that VD or that ward right now. Their name should have been given to the working force of the IEC at that voting station on the day.
More to the point, why weren't they informed that they're now in a new voting district? That's not a difficult task.
How easy is that to have warned people? To knock on their doors. There's the SMSs, the WhatsApps. But the mere fact is that you could knock on people's door on special voting day to go and get their vote. So that 100 people that you have now located into a different voting station, How difficult would that have been to do that throughout South Africa to all the voters that find themselves now outside of the voting district, but they need to go to another voting station. So that is actually, as far as I'm concerned, that's one of them that's actually serious, but there's more serious allegations. For example, people receiving only one ballot. That is very serious. How do you rectify a man receiving only one ballot on election day? You don't know that his party is not registered in that ward. He can choose to vote for someone else. Why?
For my international audience, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for my international audience that isn't familiar with it, in South Africa, you get two ballots. You get one for candidates for wards, and you get one for parties for proportional representation. That system is a bit different than most of the world. Am I correct? That's what you're referring to.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. The two ballots. So it was very selectively done who receives and don't receive. The man that don't, I can sit there and I can figure out, okay, you're going to vote for this person, you're going to vote for that party. So I'm just going to give you one ballot and see, because you look like you don't know that you need to receive two ballots. We do have the proof of that. People received only one ballot when they heard the story, but there's two ballots. What happened to the ballot that person did not receive? Because when you walk into to go and vote, they know exactly who's going to come to. There's the registered voters, so you know exactly who they are. So you only have an X amount of ballots. You're not going to have 200 ballots in a ward where there's only going to be 100 people that's supposed to vote at that polling station. You cannot have more than that. Where did the ballots that wasn't given to these people, who only received one, where did it go? No answer. So we need answers to that. That's a serious allegation. How do they explain that away? How do you fix it? There's only one way to fix it. It's re-election. We're not interested in a recount, because already what it shows is that the counting was wrong as well. So asking for a recount is really not the way to go. We want a re-election.
In fact, what you're saying is interesting, because if there's truth to what you're saying, which I don't doubt in the least, but if there's truth to it, it's interesting that the ward council votes are 11,937,509, and the proportional representation votes are only 7,000 difference. If a lot of people didn't get a proportional representation ballot, then did someone else fill out their ballot on their behalf? Vote for a party? It does raise a question if what you're saying is true, Anwar, because that's odd. I mean, there's only a few thousand votes difference out of 12 million cast. That's pretty crazy if that's true.
Also, and in actual fact, we want to see the spoiled ballots. That's only going to be fair. And what is the majority of the spoiled ballots? Who you can also see more or less where or there will be an indication where that person possibly, what that person voted for, who that person voted for. Because sometimes when you make a cross in a square, and if the line crosses over the box, they regard that as a spoiled vote. You can also get that information from the IEC, what they regard as a spoiled vote. Now, we need to see that. Because there's not a balance out of the vote for wards, and then the vote for PR, and then you have the spoiled votes. Let's see that balancing out. That's where the auditing comes in. But I'm going to tell you, it's not going to balance out, because we know people that they only received one ballot. So how do you rectify that? Are you going to tell me now, okay, how many people do I know that actually only received one ballot? Here is his ballot. Can you go to him and give it to him and give him an opportunity? Really? So you cannot fix it like that. There's only one way to fix it, and that's a re-election.
Now you mentioned...
I haven't even touched on the fairness of this election. No, I'm on your show.
No, it's okay. It's the slight delay in it breaking up with their data connection, it makes it a little challenging at times. So I apologize if I interrupt you. But you mentioned a short while ago a seat. So the Democrat Independent Party has secured one seat in Cape Town, if I'm not mistaken, and that's your seat on the council. A number of smaller parties were making a lot of hay, not necessarily your party, but others were saying, well, it's time to bring the Democratic Alliance to heel, bring them below 50% in the mother city because they're arrogant and they don't listen to anybody. Now, I'm not claiming they're not arrogant. They don't listen to anybody. That's not my argument. But they didn't get below 50%. They stayed at 60%. So going forward, your seats and the seats that the Cape Independence Party, the Freedom Front Plus, Good Party have on the council, how do you feel about your ability to influence Jordan Hill Lewis or whatever his name is? I guess he's going to be the mayor most likely for the DA because they have the majority, and they have so. How do you feel about a chance to actually engage or have them listen, or do you have concerns that the DA will just do whatever the DA wants to do and ignore the smaller parties?
They're obviously going to do as they have done, and it's all about the power and the control, because that's what politics are to the ruling party of the country, and now also the ruling parties within your municipality, because it's all about power. And we come from a different block of thinking, and that is it's about the people. People first, nothing else. The DI brings forth integrity, which that's what we say. That's who we are. That's who we regard ourselves, and we will continue with that. Don't insult my intellect when it comes to South Africa and this election, because smaller parties, one particular party, abused that right, and they abused the code of conduct. You cannot say that a vote for a smaller party weakens your vote to fight against the ruling party of the country. That is a direct violation of the code of conduct. Me, as a party, have no place in your campaign. The campaign is about what you can bring to the table, about the ethics, about people, about our businesses, our education, our communities. That's what the election is about. What do you bring to the table, and how can we help each other to help our people bring a better, make a change? So I'm a humanist before anything else. Don't label me with anything else. I don't want to be called as a small party, because when you address the ruling party, you will address them by their acronym and by their name. And the DI, the Democratic Independent Party, wants to be recognized as exactly the same. Because I'm in council, I've been in council for 12 years, and I will be treated with that respect. When you talk about any other party by their name, you don't call me. And the small parties, no, I'm not a small party. Because it says when you vote for a small party, you are weakening the ruling party's vote to fight the ANC. It's wrong for them to have done that, and that's a direct violation. And we sit with the code of conduct. We have signed that pledge, all of us. Why do they need to point fingers or use and that's it? They degraded us. They insulted us. Don't insult my integrity. I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow it. You have infringed on every citizen by language of that nature. We did not weaken. We are here to strengthen. Doesn't matter how small the person, how small their voice, how minute their home, or where they come from in the city, in this country, which corner they're from. They deserve that right. And I, as a representative, as the president of the DI, will fight for that right. But you're not going to insult us. I'm sorry. We are not small parties. Well, and you can't appreciate that. And the fine, the action from the IEC. Why are they not taking action? Because this is an ad that ran on TV. You cannot misinform the people, because the other story goes, if you a no vote, if you do not vote, you're allowing, because then the vote goes to the ruling party. What nonsense is that? Eh? A no vote is a no vote. So this is how you treat the electorate. It's misinformation. I'm sorry, we need to rectify this. Those that have perpetrated this violation must pay the price. Their votes, we either have a re-election or remove their votes, as the pledge, as the code of conduct says. When you violate certain things, this could happen. We want their votes removed. And there's various other political parties as well, and I'm going to tell you why. They might stand alongside us, but if we infringe and if we as the DI violated anything, we will face that. Mm-hmm. But we have not. If I decide, we are told on the night before the elections, at 12 o'clock, campaigning stops. 12 o'clock the night before. So if I can obey and watch the violations, because this is the pledge we go to sometime before the election takes place, the parties are needed to come and actually then sign the pledge of the Code of Conduct for the elections within South Africa. We've signed it. So if you're going to violate, I have the right to report you, to complain. And the IEC must do the honorable thing, not challenge where this comes from. It's challenge the allegation, because it's there. You want us to give you the proof, we have it. And that should have been your cooperation with the other parties or all parties that have a complaint. Don't, I understand we have to go through X, Y process. I went through a process. It's live. It's been televised on every channel that you care to open. So if you're calling me whatever you want to, I will have to defend myself. Now, what happened to that? The very next day, political parties, they know all of them, except the DI. And if you need to come online, you need to come and confess and say, I didn't have the funds to do that. This is what we don't have as a political party in South Africa, but what we do have is ethics, is ethical leadership. We have a vision, and it's not about what any of them did or did not do, in the sense of when it comes to deliverance of our people, the services that's required. We have a plan. We're not here to fight what they are doing and how they're doing it. I'm not interested in slander or in talking about another political party. I'm here to bring real change for our people. And it's time that they start seeing this. But if I'm not given the airtime on all the, the mainstream of media, if we are not given that, and at the same time when I'm telling you this, Mr. Chris Wyatt, is that I'm saying, not just me, give every other independent and political party exactly the same time. That opens up a beautiful window for the electorate. He has a choice. Because now we are told all politicians, all parties are exactly the same. The four that the media is basically jamming down people's throats. These are the four parties. It's like saying, this is your choices, you only have four. But there's 30 odd political parties that's actually vying for, to represent their communities. Let's not wipe them. So at the same time, I'm saying in a re-election, in a fair situation, give everyone. So I don't just speak for the DI. I speak for everyone. The electorate out there, they did not vote. They need a voice right now. And that is more than 50% of the electorate, which means you did not get a quorum. You cannot claim that you're going to be doing services or you are like they will say, you will see it's going to come. We have been given a mandate by the electorate.
Yeah, that's going to be entertaining to hear a mandate. Can we claim that? First off, as I predicted...
It's happened already. So
it's just going to be comical, though. I mean, as I predicted, in the municipal elections, 31 to 38% is the most turnout you ever get. This election, 31% of eligible voters. See, they keep saying, of registered voters. That isn't what matters. It's the people who are eligible to vote. Only 31% showed up. And speaking of this, a couple things to unpack you just talked about there. You mentioned, I think you were alluding to the Democratic Alliance, saying a vote for small parties is a vote for the ruling party and against governance. But the ANC did something similar. But that's the DA that did it. But the ANC did something similar, saying that if you don't vote for us, you won't have electricity. Only we can do things, and that's on the margins of violating the code. That's a threat. Well, and it's come true. Within hours of the election, the ANC, the ESCOM already started doing load shedding in Cape Town. They already punished people. But here's the thing: voters saw through it. First off, Anwar, the ANC got 13% of eligible voters, which is 5.2 million. That's an abysmal result for a party that claims to hold the mantle of liberation as if they're the only ones that played a role in it. In fact, their role was far less than they claim. But 5.2 million, 13% of the eligible voters. They lost 32% of the votes they got in 2016. They lost 2.6 million votes. Hey, and the Democratic Alliance is crowing, going around tempo. Hey, the ANC's below 50%. This is progress. No, You lost 1.5 million votes, or 37% of the votes you had last time. You did even worse than the ANC. And both of them, the ANC lost control of nearly 40 cities and municipalities, councils, and the DA has lost half of theirs. Well, now we got 66 hung councils in which are going to be dirty backroom deals, twisted arms, and promises of this and promises of that. And the people of South Africa are going to be
late services.
Exactly. The people that are going to suffer are the people of South Africa. Now, to your point about the press, two things I'll say on that. One, to be fair about the situation. One, to point out the unfairness of it. I watched News 24 constantly do things about interviewing mayors, the mayors of Cape Town. They had the DA candidate, they had the ANC candidate, and they had, I think, I don't know if they had the good candidate but anyway, but that's it. As if no one else was running. They didn't have the Freedom Front Plus candidate for mayor. They didn't have any of the other parties.
Exactly.
Where
was Anwar Adams? Where was the DI?
Exactly. Where there was, but even if they say you were very small, if it's very small minor, they didn't even bring in at least the top 5 parties. They focused on just 3 parties as if to imply that it's just 3, and they did this throughout. Now, to be fair in this situation, there were 325 parties competing. And so it's impossible nationwide to give press coverage to 325 parties. It's just a cacophony. But to be fair, in Cape Town, this was a situation specifically in which the DA was under pressure, especially from smaller parties, and there should have been more attention in the media by real journalists covering what was actually happening in Cape Town on the ground. And I think that's a fair statement. I don't know if you agree with that or disagree.
Well, my comment, my response to them, and I had a few newspaper houses, TV, radio. I've challenged them, and I said, but we sat through a meeting at ICASA held to show fairness. But 2 weeks, I think it was 2.5 weeks before the election date, ICASA comes along and saying we're going to, give all parties a fair opportunity. So we got slot number 34. And this is for TV and for radio. And it would have been every day as a build-up to the actual voting day. That's rather late, what they say. Once again, rather late than never. So I don't know how we're going to play on this disadvantage that it's not just perpetrated against the DI. It's perpetrated against the people of South Africa,
yep.
The citizens. Whether you voted or did not vote at this point, this juncture, I'm sorry.
Now it's interesting.
Did not give us the fair opportunity.
Yep.
It's
supposed to be a level playing field. It's supposed to be a level playing field. That's what's supposed to happen. That's why it's supposed to be independent electoral commission. What's that?
It's not an even playing field.
No, I'm not claiming it is. I'm saying it's supposed to be. That's why it's supposed to be the independent electoral commission, not controlled by the government. But I did find it interesting that when they announced the results, the president of the country is there, the president of the ANC. Why is the president of South Africa at the independent electoral commission's announcement of the results? That's just bogus to me from the get-go. I would not expect to see either Trump or Biden show up if there was an independent body saying this is the election results. I would expect them to see at their party headquarters celebrating or crying in their beer if they lost, but not at the independent electoral. That just shows you how rotten the thing is to its very core and how people don't really get what's going on here. And I had a question here from one of my viewers, and I'll mention something and then I'll give you a chance to answer it. It was less than 24 hours after they finally finished counting, after promising to finish, then promising to finish, then promising to finish. 3 days later, they finally gave us the end results that they're presenting to the public. But within hours, they said it was a free and fair election. And also these bogus polls that 90+% of people who voted said it was free and fair. I find that fascinating because that's people who voted, not people who are denied the right to vote. So that's an important distinction. But my guest, or my viewer asked the question, did the Irsc respond to the complaints that your party registered? Are they investigating or not?
There's complaints. There's also cases that has been opened with the police on certain things. There has been complaints that various parties have fulfilled that. We're still in a process of drafting certain cases. Whether they're going to tell us we are late or not, we cannot be late for something like this. You want now proof? We need to give you viable proof. So it's leaving the investigation at our door to do their job. They're the ones that are in control of the election. They're the ones that must actually prove that it was fair and free. Making a comment to say that it was fair and free is obnoxious. You're insulting everyone's integrity. That's what the IEC is doing right now, alongside with any other political party that is agreeing and saying that it was fair and free. For who? And then prove it. Show us every single thing about the elections. I think we have the right to see and the right to know. Put it on the table, open it up again so that we can see. You need to prove yourself because there's been an allegation. And the allegation is not just on a piece of paper. It's been exposed. We all are being exposed to the public, and the public has the right to know, and the public has a right to see that you prove yourself. That we are not talking focus, and playing games. We're not playing games. We have a responsibility to our country as citizens. We have responsibility then to that electorate, registered and the unregistered, because we're talking a large portion that is not registered is the future and the youth of this country. So if this is how we're going to allow things to happen, what do we tell the country and the world? We are corrupt. We love it. We want it to continue. We don't want this situation to continue. We want it to change. And the DI is here to help that change. We are here for that change. And we speak to the benefit of the people, not to the power of politicians. People must realize they have their life in their own hands. Start making those decisions for yourself, and stop allowing political parties and politicians to decide for you. And this is where it starts. We're going to start with a wrong, with a lie. What do you expect every other aspect of your life, daily life, to be in this country if we have started with a lie? There is irregularities that needs to be answered, that needs to be checked, and that needs to be rectified. The violations carries a fine. Violations carries a punishment. We want to see that happen so that the right people take office. And at the same time, we're talking a re-election. We might not even be re-elected as the DI.
In a recount.
It was irregular, So if we say we are an ethical party, we say a re-vote. We might not even make it to the polls again. I mean, people might come and now vote for someone else, or the real votes. Give the registered voters of this country a fair opportunity to make that decision. Don't rig the elections because you fear you lose your power. Losing power or gaining power, if it's used properly for its people, we cannot continue to have homeless people. Education is suffering. Health system is suffering. Safety and security is a problem. Homeless, human settlements, every single aspect of our people's lives is affected, whether you have it or you don't have it. Whether you're rich or poor, it affects each and every single one. So this speech, this talk, is for the citizens, for the individuals, for each and every citizen. The DI speaks for all of you. I, Anwar Adams, that's exactly why I'm here. So to get that message across. So if this message was given before and on all TV, mainstream media, can you imagine the change in that? Because the incoming mayor, his thunder was shot and taken away from him by a true mayor that should have been. And there's many others that stepped forward. But I'm stepping forward to show you the wrongs that is happening. It's a brave, we needed this move. I could not take it because it affected every single person out there, political party and our citizens. Mr. Chris Wyatt, this is me speaking from our heart and for the people of South Africa.
Well, let me address something there that potentially is a wrong. Now, this isn't the wrong, but I'm going to get to the wrong. So I'm going to set this up, and then I'll get to the wrong. I don't want people to misinterpret that and infer incorrectly. But your party is, from what I understand, is very concerned about the homeless situation in Cape Town. At least 14,000 people are listed as homeless there, perhaps even more. So I know that the Daily Maverick actually took time to write a story about you. I'm not sure if it's a complimentary story or an attack story. It's a bit confusing based on the title, but if you read through it, it seems like a complimentary story, but the title isn't necessarily the most generous. But you're concerned about homeless folks, and there is a News 24 report from yesterday talking about homeless people in Cape Town having their identification cards confiscated by the city. And in fact, there's people in the story willing to give their name and be photographed for the news story, stating unequivocally that the city authorities took their identification when they confiscated their belongings and tried to evict them. Now, evictions, it's a whole separate thing. Unlawful occupation of land, whole separate thing. I'm not discussing that. I'm just saying that it seems beyond wrong that authorities would confiscate the identification of any citizen. You need identification to prove things. You need identification to collect things. And it's quite, I don't want to say fascinating, but it's appalling, I should say, if any person has their identification card confiscated by authorities. Is, in fact, this something you're aware of, or is this News 24 a new story that you're not aware of? Because I know there's a number of rights groups that are trying to help the homeless in Cape Town and other places, and they've also raised this issue in the past. So the authorities deny that it happens, but in fact, we find out that police officers and others responsible for removing homeless people and putting them elsewhere oftentimes confiscate their personal belongings, their mobile phones, cash they have on them, and their identification cards. Now, am I correct in my assumption or my analysis or research that your party is concerned about the homeless? That's the first question. Number two, is this an issue with identification cards being confiscated and people not being able to vote that you're aware of?
Okay, if you would not mind, I would like to just take a step back.
Okay.
And then get back to that question.
Sure.
It's actually a very important question. Is when we speak about elections and the campaigning stopping at 12 o'clock the night before, yet the next day political parties are allowed to set up gazebos. They go and they hand out T-shirts, they hand out leaflets. They are contravening. And those parties, all of them, are answerable to that violation. It is violation. The mere fact that you're setting up a gazebo in front of, with your branding on the gazebo and on your chair, on everything, your tablecloth, that is campaigning, whether you like it or not. So you can't tell me campaigning stops the night before, because now you're going to have someone sitting outside there under that gazebo with a voter's roll, and they have people on the outside walking, one sitting down, the others are playing music, and they, as the voter comes along, they grab the voter, come, let me check if you're on the voting roll. You're taking him under your branded gazebo, and you check, and you see his name there, and say, yes, your name's here. You know, we don't know in that conversation what it says. Oh, we XYZ party, vote for us today because you're on our list here. That's a voter's roll. That same action that is taking place on the inside when you go and vote. The Irsc officials there will give you and check that your name is on the voter's roll. Why is it done outside? You are basically playing with the people's intellect. You are playing with people's minds. It's mind control. He came there deciding to vote for a particular party, but now he sees his name is on this ballot, on this voter's roll under a tent, which represents another political party. Right there, you're playing with his mind. It's psychology. It's wrong. Voting, campaigning has stopped the night before, which means everything ceases. You are not to be seen in the station. You are not needed there. The voter must have that free choice and unhindered. Okay, let's get back to the home. I just want to actually go more in depth in these things so people can, if you don't mind, Mr. Wyatt.
Not at all.
Because I feel, it needs that depth for people to understand why we say campaigning stops the night before and why we're complaining about it, because it happens the next day. That's blatant campaigning. That happens the next day. So all parties that have taken part in that, put up a gazebo, they are all culprits. And they must face the code of conduct violation law. Okay, back to the homeless. Yeah, it's one of my. I've been serving in the human settlements in the city of Cape Town since I started as a councillor in the city of Cape Town, and to see the increase of homeless people over the period within this COVID period, it just didn't gel. Just didn't make sense. How people are. On the roads, they weren't even thought of or taken care of. They were then gathered and put into a concentration camp in Strandfontein. Now, if COVID was that serious, shouldn't the most vulnerable of our people get the best of service? Because if you do not take care of them, the spread could be faster, and yet the spread did not come from the homeless. But now you don't care about them, whether they are, they get sick or not. The issue of the identity document of people, some Mostly it happens where they lose it in a fire, where they lose it in the scuffle when law enforcement, land invasion, or whoever comes and the city comes to remove them. Even here, we as the DI have a plan, a vision, because we look at these things because we are talking about human beings here. Doesn't mean that they're unemployed, lesser than you, that they're not equal to you. The ID documents, they do confiscate people's belongings. They would actually pick someone up, remove them, and confiscate their belongings. Why? The person already has nothing. You're taking away what they have, and you leave them only with what they have on their back. Should you not be a caring city and say, right, let's put this into a better plan? You cannot just pick someone up and move them, and there's no plan in place for it. Expect them to go find a 20-odd rand to book into a night shelter or a haven that is a tender process. Whoever runs these processes, they achieve that through a tender process. And then people must just be happy with what they receive. They deserve better. If we need to feed people, if we need to house people, if we need to educate people, assist them, and this normal narrative that goes around that, but they want to live like that. No one wants to be born into poverty. No one wants to be born a criminal. No one wants to be born on the wrong side of the railway line. It is about giving people the right choices. And if they find themselves in an unstable situation, we as government should be there to uplift and empower them. And those are very strong words, and we have that as part of our campaign. And it's not just words that we're using, it's about bringing real upliftment and real empowerment to people, communities and individuals. Because people on the street does not mean only that they're homeless. There's a lot of positives in that. Did you really investigate why that person landed up on the street, landed up there homeless, and yet now you will come along and confiscate his very existence? That's unfair. So what News 24 is covering, it's because something has been reported, and that's what people are saying to us. So there's no lies in it. Once again, why? Why are you confiscating the last of what people have? For what? Where are you going to put them? You're confiscating, are you giving them anything better? Are you going to actually offer them a better life? Put them through a better process? Instead of actually saying, right, let's put you into a concentration camp. 21st century concentration camp. That's laughable.
But my point on this, Anwar, is that this story, why wasn't it reported on the 24th of October or the 28th of October? Why are we hearing about it on the 6th of November? I mean, many of us know about this situation. Why wasn't the press covering this story to let people know about it? That may have had a very direct impact on which parties were voted for on the 1st of November. To me, it's just like the story about Dr. Zwelin Mkhize potentially being a witness or a suspect in the assassination of Babita Deokaran over the PPE scandal because she had the goods on corrupt members of the government. To me, that story was reported after the fact when the Hawks already knew that Zwelin Mkhize either was a suspect or is a witness in this coming trial that's going to happen for these people who murdered Babita Deokaran. That's a story that should have been broken before the election, that was held until after the election when people voiced with their vote. If they had known about this, there would have been more people who would have voted against the ANC just because the anger about that. So those two stories strike me as very much the mainstream, lamestream, fake stream media controlling the narrative. Just like right now, the ANC is actually walking around in zero poses talking about this is the greatest campaign the ANC's ever run. I'm laughing. I mean, you got 13% of eligible voters. Then you're not very good at anything. And the DA saying, well, at least the ANC's below 50%. Yeah, but you lost 30% of your votes and half the cities you controlled. This seems to me to be the media intentionally influencing and affecting elections. That's my view on it. These stories were known about. A genuine journalist should have reported them before the elections, my view.
I think it's actually a great view where you're coming from, and I couldn't agree with you more, because there is lots of unfairness in the sense when we talk about media, and I mentioned it in my outburst. The media either makes or breaks any situation. They can make or break someone. So, and the media has that power. But now, with elections, how so is it that you cannot actually give the electorate the proper choice? of parties that is on that list, on that ballot, the day or weeks before the time. And this is exactly what it boils down to, the media. Because ICASA, with us, our broadcasting authority, telling us we have slot number 34 in the country to go on TV and radio. But then they break it down, oh, you're only in the Western Cape. I said, irrespective. You want to tell me that my electorate or people in Cape Town, because I'm only in Cape Town, does not watch SABC 1, 2, and 3, does not watch DSTV, doesn't have DSTV, don't have ETV. Those are the mainstream broadcasters. And people basically gravitate toward that. So mind control. If you're only showing 2 or 3 people all the time on all the interviews, in the newspapers, front page, page 3, you are controlling and you're basically influencing the decision of the voter. We had enough time to say, if you can't actually expose all 30, then do no one. Because then you're doing a justice. No one gets any exposure. He's left out there to talk in his community, to talk to his family, to talk to his friends. That's what you got to do. If I have to do, because we pay exactly the same amount of money to contest in these elections. You got to pay to be in a district. You got to pay to be in a council, into a metro. You got to pay. And now we're not just talking about in our area. It's other districts within the Western Cape, all the municipalities, because it's a local government municipality. The same thing happens when we have a general election. I am expected to pay the same amount of money paying. That's unfair.
Yep.
It is unfair because they have the funds, they have the sponsorship, and I'm against private funding. It's exactly the reason why we are in a situation in this country, because of private funding. No one gives you money for nothing.
Yep, they're trying to buy your vote. This connection's broken up there for the moment. Folks, you're not...
Just got to keep on suffering.
Now your connection broke up there for a second.
Securing your seat, and also buying the vote, and buying your tenders that you are going to obviously roll out now in the next few weeks.
Well, I think Anwar, that you certainly have a fair position arguing for a recount and a revote. That's kind of what I said here in the States after what I call the choosing of 2020. It wasn't an election; it was a choosing. I said that in certain states, like the one that I reside in, where the state violated its own election law, that there had to be a revote there, not necessarily in the whole country, but in this place. So I appreciate where you're coming from, and I certainly share a passion for things being wrong and should be righted. But the reality is that that's never going to happen here, and I don't think it's going to happen there. So given that that's a reality, going forward, what do you hope to accomplish? Or we keep bringing this to light as long as people are willing to listen? Are your concerns about it? Because I think it's important to note what you believe to be something unjust and not just let it pass, because people are in the habit of this. I mean, people in South Africa have already forgotten about the ANC's internal insurrection in July in Gauteng and in the KZN. I mean, it's just kind of brushed it off their back. They're like, no big deal. But the shop owners, the people who work, the people who rely on the N3 highway, the people whose homes were threatened, the 354 people who are dead, that hasn't been forgotten for those folks. But the rest of the country's just kind of moved on. Are you concerned that it's done and dusted, the election's over, we're just going to move on? And if you're concerned, will you keep bringing it to people's attention?
I'm going to keep on reminding those that are actually thinking that they have a mandate from the electorate. If you talk for the electorate, you've got to talk for more than 50% of the people, and not a percentage within the lesser percent that voted. So they're going to make that statement, and I'm waiting for that. But I will remind the IEC, like I've been doing them for the past 12 years in these meetings, questioning the issue of the campaigning issue, that it is wrong. Posters, I want posters banned. T-shirts. Let our community come out and do a proper election, because we all know who our strong people were. Let the candidates come from the community. There should be a completely different mind shift, a paradigm shift in the system that we are currently faced with, because it's corrupt. We are not going to get changes, like you say, it's going to continue to happen. Oh, yes, you are not far from right. I mean, it's so on hitting the nail on the head because it will happen every 5 years. But if you let things wither and die off and, into history, that's when it becomes a gross injustice against mankind, against your citizens, against your electorate. So we, as the DI, will keep that fire burning. They know me to be the one that don't let go. So it's that little Jack Russell that's got you by the ankles. We'll bring you down for the injustice that you have done against the electorate, against us as a political party. There's other things I can go into that has happened. Prior to my outburst, or at the convention center in Cape Town, at Century City, we could go online and we could see the results coming from the wards. So we could also see how many VDs within that ward still needs to be counted. It's strange how that all just changed. The minute I highlighted certain issues and we got back home and to check on our laptops, all of a sudden, those wards that was not completed yet went blank. You could only see the wards that was finished counting. And now we're talking about less than 50. Now just remember, when we were in that convention center and this was a media briefing, the puppet said, they are nearly done, they're closing down the results center. But 50% is not counted yet. I didn't know these things at that point in time because I was not in front of my computer. But now, all of a sudden, I cannot go into a ward and check the different stations within that ward that has not been counted, because we could keep tabs on these things. And luckily, we took of a particular ward, which is a Ward 29, where we were second to the DA. In one of the voting stations, the DA was on 31% and we were on 30%. In another station within that ward, we ran second to the ANC. ANC was on 26%, we were on 23%. Overall, we were in second place. What I find very strange, that these two wards don't sit next to each other. But yet, all of a sudden, the wards around them, we hardly received any votes. That's very strange. All of a sudden, when those votes finally came through. But now I couldn't check these things because I already told my committee and my campaign team, someone's going to pull the plug on us here. Something's going to happen here. And look what happened. All of a sudden, we hardly got any votes. But yet we received in two of those voting stations, which is not close to each other. But the others that still needed to be counted gave us nothing. Very strange. How do you score over 1,000 votes on PR and all of a sudden you don't have it? It just disappeared like that. So these are all the investigations and what we're doing and asking questions. What happened after we were at the convention center? Why did this, going online, how come we could not now all of a sudden access certain information? And then we just got a result and we got a seat. So my team then asked me, but they phoned me and said, yeah, but you're not excited. You should be. I said, the way this thing was achieved leaves a lot to be desired. So that irregular, that violation is what is on top of my mind and still is. I feel aggrieved, I feel livid. And now, like you've asked that question, I would probably hope to hear from you in the future so that we can continue this in the sense of, as a follow-up of what the DI, or what is happening in South Africa, what has happened with this irregular vote. Is it going to be, will there be a re-vote, which I feel should happen, and I'm not going to back off. Whether they want to have it in 2 years or 3 years, we need a re-vote for this. This was wrong. And we cannot regard it as a valid and legal and a fair, free process. I'm sorry, it's not.
Well, I actually look forward to having you back on the program. We'll follow up in the future to see how it's going. Also, if you don't mind, since you're involved with human settlements, that's definitely a concern in the mother city, something I'd like to talk about periodically in the future. We have you on to talk about that, what's being done, what's not being done. But in comparison, what you're talking about with wards, let me get, okay, so I live in a jurisdiction, our election was on the 2nd of November. So ours was on Tuesday, yours was on Monday. We have a general election, first Tuesday every November. So we had the general election. I was dismayed to find that there was no one on the ballot for several offices when I voted in the primary, which is for parties early in the year. And then I got the ballot. I downloaded the ballot a few months back, and I saw that on the general election, there was nobody for several positions. And one of them is judge of elections. That's the person responsible for making sure that the things you're talking about aren't occurring at a polling station. So I was dismayed by that. In my jurisdiction, there are 4,900 plus registered voters. So I decided to run a writing campaign. I canvassed my neighborhood the night before. I told a few people about it a few weeks ahead of time. And then on election day, I was teaching in the morning, and then I went to polling station at lunchtime where I handed out postcards, with my candidacy. And I managed to get people to vote for me. I went back in the evening after I finished teaching for a bit, but most people had already voted. So we had about 30% turnout, so it's about the same as South Africa. But for us, that's actually very good in an off year. But the point I'm getting at is that within an hour of the polling station having been closed, every single vote was counted. It was verified. It was printed out, and all the write-in ballots, because when they go into the system, they're scanned. If there's a write-in ballot, you can see the signature or the handwriting that people write down for the candidates. So I was able to go through the 30 or 40 strips from the voting machines, because there's different machines, and add up all the votes for write-in within an hour of the polling closing. I've gone back the next morning and made sure that it was kind of dark, and I was using my mobile with a torch, made sure that I hadn't missed anything. And in fact, I was successful, and it looks as though I've got 3 times as many votes as the next closest person who ran for the office. So on the 15th of this month, I'll be going to our local county board of elections to be there for the announcement and then argue for a few of the votes where people misspelled my name to claim that they're my votes and likely be installed as a judge of elections. So, but my point with that story is not to talk about me winning, because that's what happened, but within an hour of the thing being closed, not 2 or 3 days later, the wards that have 4,000 or 5,000 people in South Africa, that should be done that night, not 2 days later. That's ridiculous.
We all know that it doesn't take that long.
No, it doesn't. Well, it does if you're messing around with the votes.
No, most definitely. So you'll have even our agents in a particular ward as well. We'll talk about, and then there's in other areas where party agents, are asked to leave because they're going to have lunch or they're going to have something to eat. They can come back at a appointed time. I think it was within an hour or two, and then they're going to start counting. A party agent, an observer, sits through the entire process, whether you want to eat or not. It's done transparently, because no one leaves that station until the votes are counted. That's the reason for closing at a particular closing or at the voting time. And now you go into, yes, you can have a little break, but with everyone can see you having a break. And then we go into finishing the count. Like you say, what can all happen between 3 days? Because you got to sleep. You're going to have your lunch, you're going to have your supper, you're going to have your breakfast, you're going to sleep. Or for 3 days, are you a zombie that you can actually stay awake that long? So a lot of things can happen. And if you look at the deliverance, the material, how it was delivered, how it was set up, how these places were set up. We're talking about also intents. So
Yep, it looks like we got a break there.
We all knew what was going to happen. Yeah, sorry. Is it on my side?
Yeah, it's on your side, the data connection. It's probably South African Intelligence Service listening in.
Well, they're welcome to listen. I think doesn't matter which intelligence or who,
No, I'm just having a go. I'm a retired intelligence officer from the U.S. Army, so
just hopefully they do a proper job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And what is coming is the ethical and proper leadership. It's going to come. You cannot keep us away. It will happen.
Well, I think that, Anwar, I think that the one result of this election, I don't know if there'll be a groundswell, but I think there's going to be a number of people that are going to ask for an investigation into the conduct of the IEC, the structure of the IEC, the charter of the IEC, its role, It's failure to inform voters that they've been moved to different precincts, to different wards. That is, I think that there's serious investigative journalism that needs to take place here. My concern is that the desire for that is lacking in South Africa, except maybe the Daily Maverick. But maybe, so I think that's something that should come out of this. The IEC, I don't think, can be trusted with South Africa's elections anymore.
No, we need to find a more independent body. And, time's up. You either fix it.
Time's up. I like that.
You need to fix it, because this country needs healing. It needs fixing. It needs collaboration. It needs each and everyone's input. And we cannot cheat each other. We can't start on a cheat. So please, South Africa, the appeal is out there to the citizens. Voice your anger, voice your opinion, voice the proof that we all have in the sense of the irregular occurrences from the IEC at the voting stations. Because very soon the fight is going to be very strong, because I think we're going to be shooting to a level 4, maybe possibly very soon. Because all of a sudden our cases for COVID will increase overnight. It was put on hold by the elections, by your president. So is this what we actually want?
No, it's coming. Some of my viewers have already made some comments over here, and I predicted long before the election, once the Constitutional Court said you must hold the election, I predicted as soon as the election's over, load shedding will resume. They really beat me to the punch. It was within hours. And that the other thing is that within a week, if the ANC is punished at the polls, you'll move to level 3 adjusted. And if the ANC gets slaughtered, it'll be level 4 adjusted, just out of spite to get the South Africans. Because remember the fourth wave? Kawabunga, dude. The surf's up. The fourth wave is supposed to be right now. That's why we can't have an election. Infections are down. Fatalities are down. So whatever science they're using clearly isn't the right science. It's absolutely crazy. So let me ask. Go ahead.
Now, even allowing that situation, the mindset or how people are being set, and they are now put and set against each other because of COVID. You choose to take the jab, or you choose not to take the jab. It is your democratic, it's your human right to make that decision. There should not be what we're experiencing is where people are now degrading each other.
Well, yeah, no. What you're getting is an apartheid-like system of segregation and abuse of people based on their jab status. It's crazy. Here in the United States,
I'm saying.
Go ahead. All you're saying.
Respect it. All I'm saying is respect the person's decision.
Yeah.
Because either way, you're going to die, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
The day you are born, you basically start dying. Yeah. So let's get onto this. But I'm not going to allow certain things to be done. But I respect those, irrespective of their decision. It's a human right for that man, that woman, to make a decision for themselves and not to be fooled. So I think that should, on that issue, let's leave that point as it stands there, because I don't like people's rights to be infringed, and then at the same time they are being looked upon as if they are creating a pandemic in this country. They are not. We are all healthy.
Well, let me get your.
We have never been unhealthy.
Let me get your thoughts on this topic very quickly before we run out of time. In my view, because it's often the press loves to paint the Democratic Alliance as a party of the whites, because a fair amount of their leaders historically have been white South Africans. In reality, the Democratic Alliance is actually more a colored party than is a white party. The majority of its voters are actually colored. I suspect, and I've made the claim, that for a long time the Democratic Alliance has taken its colored voters in the Western Cape for granted, and just assume that they'll continue to vote for them out of hatred for the ANC and loyalty to the DA. Do you think that in this election that the DA was arrogant, perhaps, or they were just disconnected? And did color voters punish the DA? It looks like in some wards, in some municipalities, they appear to have been punished. They've been knocked down below 50%. They lost control of several municipalities in the Western Cape. And I can only attribute it, without better data and polling, to a loss of colored support for the DA.
Okay, this is one thing. When we speak to the DI, we have a certain ideology, and that speaks to one race, the human race. Mm-hmm. So I do not recognize the labels of color, because when they ask me on a form to fill in what race I am, I simply answer human. Mm-hmm. Unless you want to ask me what color, then I need to go to a hardware store to get a swatch and match it to my skin. Now I can give you a color. But I don't have the time to do that, So all I do know is I'm human, and we should treat people in that fashion. Mm-hmm. So talking about the vote that has gone to this particular party, it is that particular group of people that vote. They're not necessarily members; they are voters as well. And then you've got to look at let's look at the increase in other parties, and that has come to the fore. Mm-hmm. And then watch from today onwards the collaborations that will happen, because these are certain people that will be speaking for these groups of people. It's still under the control of the DA. Let's look at the collaborations that are going to happen going forward. Those that have shouted for and made promises, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Let's see it happen, because only when you get into council, you'll understand what needs to happen and what control they'll have over you, no matter how anti you are. So it's using the system, and I've managed to work over the years with different communities. We have no posters. We don't want T-shirts, but they are obviously within our community. Our members feel that is how the game is played. Mm-hmm. But I would love to see it eradicated, because I can gladly and easily, like I'm speaking to you, go into a community, speak in a church, speak in a hall, speak to families, and they can cross-question me. And if I am what they are seeking, then so be it. I don't need a logo. I don't need a brand. Nope. All I need to do is to show people, take back the power. It's your choice. You have a choice. And stop giving it to those that abuse it and are not using it, because you're still disenfranchised in all aspects. Some topic you touched on earlier about the homeless and them being disenfranchised. They are so grossly marginalized, and it's a situation that can be solved overnight. I've been in human settlements, and I'm telling you, it can be solved overnight. Because this city sells off land to developers every single month, and we have to sign it off. And I have opposed that, and I will always abstain from it, or I will put my objection to it. And it's been the case for over the years. I don't need to talk about it because it's on record. It's minuted. My position on that. We do have land. We do have resources. If we can fund political parties, and millions is given to political parties by corporates and individuals, yet we say we have homeless, yet we say people are jobless, people are hungry. There's people out here in our town that are dying of hunger. They don't have a warm place. Yet we are allowing political parties to print merchandise to the tune of millions. Yet we cannot solve basic human needs. We cannot solve it. But we can spend millions on campaigns. So this is one of the things that the IEC needs to look at, because in its vision and mission statement, it says we are here to control wasteful expenditure. Posters is wasteful expenditure. T-shirts is wasteful expenditure. Campaigning at the level where they threaten the electorate, if you do not vote for me. That message alone that gets put on a poster or in the newspaper is wasteful expenditure. If you really are as a politician, then we will vote for you. We will respect you. But you come to us, in the wolf in the sheep's clothing. In this case, sometimes it's called a wolf in hijab as well.
Wolf in hijab. So, I haven't heard that before. That's good. I like that one. You mentioned something a few moments ago, if I could interrupt there for just a second. You and I have never talked before. It's our first time having conversations, so I appreciate it. And so you don't know me, and I only know of you from press reports. But on my channel, you touched on a subject which I talk about frequently, and I asked about color voters because, it's interesting. Towards the end of apartheid, the National Party eliminated identification of race on official documents. So, for instance, Dr. Peter Hammond, who was my guest a few days ago, said when his children were born in 90 and 92, there's no race or color on the document. It just says South African and their gender. And then when his daughter and his other child was born in late 1990s, ANC had re-implemented that and put down race. They had to put down, that they're white or whatever they were. On my channel, I've told people, because I don't tolerate bigots and racists, and I expose them every chance I get. And I tell people, I said, first off, race is an artificial construction. We are one race, as you said, Homo sapiens. And if it wasn't true, we couldn't knock boots and reproduce. So obviously we're the same race. It's an artificial construction created by people to separate and divide people into categories for political control. And I find obnoxious. I suspect you feel the same way based on your comments. But the reason I mention this is Anne-Marie Nell said that what you said is the best statement I've ever heard about the color of your skin. Well, Anne-Marie, I've been saying that forever on my channel. You know that. Come on, man. How about some props here? I mean, listen, when people ask about color, I always tell them I'm colored too. I'm pink, in case you hadn't noticed that. I'm pink. Anyway, but the point about this is it's an absolutely silly, ridiculous thing. We're human beings, and that's what matters at the end of the day. And I think it's always a political power that's being, or a tool used just like religion, just like faith. Christians, Jews, Muslims, all people of the book, all people of faith. There's nothing wrong with those different faiths. People represent their faith differently, and they can get along. It's people who try to divide using that as a tool. And unfortunately, too many people fall for it. So I just want to get that in very quickly because you and I hadn't chatted before, so you know where I stand. Probably in the same boat where you are.
Yeah, division, divide and rule, using ethnicity and everything else to do with it. Because when you're using these tools to divide, you're actually not just dividing people on those issues, you're dividing them down for generations. And it's sad. We want to bring back that humanity where we should teach things like tolerance, understanding, discipline, morals. If you feel you want to be within your group, stay in an area where your group is represented, we don't have a problem with that. What I'm saying is respect me, respect the next one, because we're still going to have to live side by side. We're still going to work side by side. Our kids are going to go to school with each other, be it early childhood or primary, high school, tertiary, your university, and work one day. We are doing it side by side. We cannot choose who works beside us. We cannot choose who lives next to us, obviously, like in today's age. Previously, we knew who's going to live next to us,
yeah,
where we can work, what we cannot do. Yeah. We've come through that process, and it was an inhumane situation.
Yeah.
But that healing process is far from over, because people are still being racist, whether they, irrespective of what pigmentation or what religion or how they find themselves. Racism is still alive. But do you go out and shoot every racist? Do you go out because you feel? No. It is a collaboration with people in a sense of a united society and situation, from a community to a city to a country, even your family home. We need to continue teaching and bring forth discipline, morals, understanding, tolerance between peoples. Because no one has the sole right to place themselves above any other. The best way you can place yourself is as an equal as we are, and what we should recognize in everyone. And recognizing the worth and the value and the skills of people, individuals, and communities, but not subjecting people to this, what we have today. It's an infringement on our human rights, an infringement of your basic human rights. So that's what we stand for, and that's what I would love to see. The sense is I'm a politician, and I'm here for stomach politics. I'm not here for my stomach.
Well, I have to say this.
If I was...
This is a very heavy conversation with some serious topics, and I really do appreciate your views. But on to something of personal interest to me, if we could for just a moment, divert, to make it a little bit more lighthearted. And that is Zelt Murray is out. He's out at the Western Cape Rugby Union. So I am, of course, a well-known Stormers and Western Province fan. So I'm just here. And by the way, in case you're wondering, I do have a personalized jersey.
Go Stormers.
Yeah, so
okay.
I am available. I don't know what kind of influence you have, Anwar, with the rugby folks in Western Cape, if you have any, but I am available to become the managing director of the Western Province Rugby Union. Just saying. So if you could, drop that in a little bird's ear somewhere. I am available. I am crestfallen at Peter Steph Dutoy going to Japan, at Sia Khaleesi going to the Sharks. That's just sacrilege. I'm telling you, that's just wrong. So I'm available if they need somebody. I'm just saying, if you could, let somebody know.
just putting it out there. Just putting it out there.
Just putting it out there. Anyway, listen, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm very grateful to come on short notice to talk about this. I am with you, appalled at some of the things that happened. In the interest of, objective journalism, I reported as the events unfolded, and my viewers in South Africa, which is about 2/3 of my audience, about 85% of them claimed to have voted, and about 85% of them claimed that there were no irregularities where they went. They had no trouble. But I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about the 15% who were denied their franchise, who ran into irregularities. And I, like you, am very concerned about this situation. It's just simply, it's not only morally wrong, it's legally wrong. It's unconstitutional to deny people the right of suffrage, the right to disenfranchise them. So I'm glad I had a chance to talk to you about this, because other parties are less willing to talk about the topic for obvious reasons. We won't go into that. But I did want to thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'd like to give you the last chance to say something about either the election or the future for South Africa or Cape Town, whatever you'd like to share with the audience. And then we'll wrap up after that. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And I don't know if you saw our video that we actually made to share with people out there. And it's something that I think is what I should maybe leave your viewer with. You can't obviously play it right now, but how can I say? It's a message that I would love to leave, as it is said on there, with your viewers.
We pride ourselves on looking past barriers of color or creed. We only see one race, the human race. We believe in uplifting and empowering the people from grassroots level up, creating an equal opportunity society to ensure everyone the possibility of success. Let's do this, me, you, all of us, and take back our right to choose. The right to choose a better life, to reach new heights. We promise our commitment and work ethic always, and we need yours. The DI won't let you down until we reach the top.
And that's thank you from the DI. That's the video that we played, which was not aired, even, and it shows me rock climbing, because I'm a rock climber. At this point in time, I would like, if you're giving me a few more seconds or a minute or so, I would like to thank the voters out there, the supporters, our families, members, and then our candidates. And not forgetting the team, our campaign team, that ran a campaign on absolutely nothing. Because people would come, community would come, where's your posters? Why are you not, And we are trying to put a point across to show what you don't need. If you want to be a representative, or you want to say, I'm representing my party, you do not need a poster. You do not need a t-shirt. You need a mouth. You need to speak to people, because if you want to represent those people, you must be able to speak for them. So fight for them. That's what I regard as a candidate. Not someone that depends on a poster and on t-shirts to hand out and think the job is done. And then when you are elected, you are nowhere to be seen by that community, or they don't even know you. So this is the type of change that we as the DI bring forth. This is what we want to see. Less money spent on elections and on campaigns, and less money going to political parties, actually stopping private funding, because that's exactly where your corruption starts. And that's why we're in, and why elections will be rigged, because they need to stay in power to fulfill what they owe to the sponsor, whoever sponsored them. They owing people lots of favors.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So please don't use us. Yes, yes.
No, I say please. You say please. You would be aghast at the amount of money spent on elections on this side. Billions of dollars spent on election campaigns. It's talk about fruitless and wasteful spending. It's absolutely crazy because it really doesn't convince many more people to change their vote. And I should clarify for the listening audience and the viewing audience that in the state where I live, Pennsylvania. They have I hadn't voted here because I was active military, so I voted by federal absentee ballot. So I was mailing in my ballots for the past 30 years overseas in Africa and Europe and even in different states in America. So I voted in Ohio, which is where I came into military from. So I voted for the first time here, and I went to the polling station, and there were people outside there with posters and people trying to get you to vote for them. Like, what is this? Is it there like this state only requires that campaigning be done 10 feet, 3 meters away from the polling station. So when I was looking for votes on Election Day Tuesday, I was within the legal limit, just to make sure that's clear to everybody. Nobody mistakes that. But let me tell you very quickly, Anwar, some really lovely comments coming in from the viewing audience. Let's see. We said, Wandering Turtle says, such a wonderful message. It is good to see that some politicians still believe in Ubuntu. He's talking about the audio that you played there. Tony Nagy says, Anwar, good message. Tony's up in Canada. He's a South African. Ronald Hans says, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, Anwar, for sharing your views. Much appreciated. Mr. B, whom I don't recognize, says, very well said, Mr. Adams. Thank you. And then Anna Marie Nell says, must say this is probably the most real interview we've seen with a politician. Anwar, that says a lot. I've interviewed probably 4 dozen candidates and party leaders over the past 6 weeks. So I'm knackered. Today was the first day I got to catch my breath in ages. And so I think that says something. She says this is the most real, the most genuine. So Wandering Turtle says he likes you even more because he's also a rock climber. He's in the Caribbean. So anyway, very nice things are being said. There's more here, but it would take us a long time to go through all the nice compliments. Listen, Anwar Adams, I would like to thank you for coming to the program, and you're welcome to come back on the program. We'll get back with you to talk about some of these issues in the future.
Can I ask you?
Yes, you may. Yes.
If you don't, sorry for interrupting you.
That's okay.
Chris.
It's okay.
If you would not mind if I send you that video.
No, I was going to ask you afterwards. Please send me the video, and I'll air it. I'll play it for people, on my program. I have no objection to that whatsoever. So please send it to me. If it's too big for WhatsApp, then I'll send you an email address where you can send. If it's too big for that, we can use WeTransfer, which lets you send big files. But send it to me, and I'll do it. Look, I spend a lot of time on my program promoting 3 languages in South Africa that I'm familiar with, 2 of which I speak, the third one I don't, but I just have an affinity for it. That's Afrikaans, Setswana, and Sotho, Northern Sotho, because I have an affinity for those 3 groups. So I promote music freely for Afrikaans musicians as much as I can, and I'm willing to promote anything that is reasonable and it comes from South Africa so people can be aware of it. So I'm happy to share that message in that video, so please send it to me, and I'll definitely share it with my viewing audience.
Those few comments that you shared with me from your viewers, just so that they know, it's been touching and it's humbling, and I can feel it, So it's not something that rolls off my back like the water off a duck. Thank you very much. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and from our voters and from our members. We thank you for that valuable comments, because it's comments like that that swings the vote, and that's what we need. And I will live. If I live long enough, the Almighty grants me the energy and more time in politics to serve the communities and to bring that change. I'm up for the job. That's why I'm here. It's to bring that change. So thank you very much for those comments, people. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. God bless.
Well, it's very awesome, but I have to add very quickly because the Wandering Turtle said they can't wait to get back to South Africa, but he said it's mostly for the wine. Come on, Wandering Turtle. You're coming back for the wine. It's got to be more than just the wine drawing you back to the Western Cape. Anyway, Anwar Adams, counselor in Cape Town.
Maybe he means the white hair.
Maybe, I'm not sure. But Anwar Adams, a counselor in the city of Cape Town, the mother city, with the Democratic Independence, leader of the party. They managed to secure a seat in this election 2016. Lots of strange things going on. He freely shared his thoughts and concerns about it and his views. I want to thank you, sir, for your time on a Sunday, no less. I really appreciate that. I want to wish you and your family and your party a lovely evening and best of success, and hopefully things can improve in South Africa going forward.
Thank you very much for having us, Mr. Chris Wyatt. It's been a great honor to be on your show. Looking forward to many more.
All right.
I think this is exactly where it happens. This is where it happens. Thank you very much for your great show, and wishing you going from strength to strength. And all the best. God bless.
Thank you
Thank
kindly.
you.
I'm going to
It's been
put
a
you.
great honor, great pleasure.
I'm going to put you in the waiting room as I close out this stream. All right. So thank you very much. Okay, folks, that was Anwar Adams from the Democratic Independent Party in the Western Cape. His party managed to secure one seat in the Cape Town Council. That's where he'll be representing the party and looking out for the interest of Cape Townians going forward. He shared his concerns about the conduct of this election. I think we both did. I also shared my views about the Independent Electoral Commission, or as I call them these days, the Incontinent Electoral Commission, because they are full of manure. Anyway, so there you go, folks. Some really interesting points. It's great to hear from the heart from a politician who's not pandering, and also a gentleman who's willing to share his views openly. So we appreciate that. Thank you all so much. Be sure to smash the like button. I'll be back with a members perk stream at, what time is that? At 9 p.m. South Africa time today. We're now 7 hours difference here on the East Coast because the U.S. had daylight savings times. We've fallen back an hour. So we're not 6 hours, we're now 7 hours behind. So I'll see folks back here at 9 p.m. for the members perks. If you're not a paying member of Chris Wyatt Africa, you're welcome to tune in. It's going to be a relaxed stream. You can enjoy it. You won't be able to comment, but at some point we normally open it up to the audience at large, to subscribers, and to just people in the crowd. But you're welcome to come in and listen. Just going to be kind of a little pot session there, chat and enjoy and relax, because it's been a long 6 weeks for me, a long haul, and we're finally getting a chance to decompress and catch our breath, folks. Anyway, yeah, so thanks a lot for coming in. Yeah, I will stick with South Africa's time, Beth. I always stick with South Africa, Botswana, 6 p.m. And 9:35 p.m. So that's what my things are based on. This evening's members perks is different. It's not a night owls. That's why it's a little bit earlier than the night owls. Anyway, folks, thank you very much. God bless and have a lovely evening. Be sure to smash that like button and feel free to leave comments on the video after the fact. If you enjoyed it, if you found it useful or helpful, please do that. We appreciate your support here on the channel. And obviously, people are here to listen to my guests because we've just gone from 70 to 53 in the matter of seconds while I spoke. You're not here for Chris. You're here for my guests, which is good. That's why we have these guests. Thank you very much, folks. God bless, and take care of yourselves. Cheers.